Okay, awesome.
I'm so excited to be here. This army of women.
It is an army. We could take something over with. It's almost 9,000 women. All right, ladies, what are we doing afterwards? We're going to take something over, right? Mindy, you're in charge of figuring out in the next 40 minutes what we're taking over.
Okay, what we're going to overthrow? That sounds great.
Good. Okay, so we're going to start with our great interview here of Mindy. You joined the office when you were 24, new to LA, and the only woman on a writing staff of 8. How did you land that job? And which, you know, female comedy writers always say it's impossible, and we've heard that in the press many times. Friends of mine who are comedy writers say it's impossible. How did you get there?
Well, as much as I would like to present myself as just, you know, this person that was like so incredibly, undeniably talented that I was kind of plucked from obscurity, like Star is Born style, I was discovered because of this amazing program that NBC had in place.
Oh, yes.
Which I know we will talk about later, but it was a diversity program that basically they said to Greg Daniels, who was the creator of The American Office, if you hire a staff writer, which is the entry-level writing staff position, if you hire a person of color, the network would pay my salary. So when you're a fledgling show and there's only a certain amount of money for your actors and your cast, your actors and your writers, it was a really economical way to kind of introduce diversity into the workplace. And I was a direct beneficiary of that, and it was great. And like I think and then the second year, you do then become part of the show's budget. But I thought that was just a really shrewd way to get me involved. And I wish more organizations and businesses did things like that.
So did they get double the cost? Because you're double diversity, right? They didn't have women.
I didn't.
Women of color.
I didn't posit that.
Twofer. Were you twofer?
I didn't suggest that, but that is pretty shrewd.
Okay, all right. How did you ensure that your female voice, though, was heard in that room full of men? I mean, we've all experienced moments, you know, things like when the iPad was made, and everybody says, where was the woman in the room when they were naming it the iPad, right? So did you ever have a time where you had to save those guys from themselves and stupid guy stuff that they were going to do?
So I will say that while I do believe, you know, there's a sense in comedy writers' rooms, and I think this is fairly true, that they can be very sexist environment and very unfriendly to women. With The Office, and this was an example that was led by Greg Daniels, we had a very small staff of writers who were all self-described as kind of East Coast feminists. And even though on the surface you look at it and it would be like, okay, well this is maybe visually a very elitist group of white men, they were, again, I'm in the great minority here, they're incredibly excited to have a different voice represented there. So while I would say that they weren't necessarily familiar with some of the things I was as a woman, I think they were so welcoming. And I am the first to say and disclaim that that is not the common experience for most women in Hollywood. But at the beginning of The Office, I mean, look at The Office. The show is so unglamorous, and you have people on that show who do not look like people that would be on other television shows. And that's what made it so popular and great. Like, I couldn't have been in any other show. And Greg said, what is beautiful is what is real. And that's what he said at the very beginning of The Office. And I honestly cannot think of another show where that is like the philosophy going into it.
Do you think that's one of the major successes? Is that why it was successful? Because more people could actually relate to it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a show that takes place in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And it is supposed
All right, Pennsylvania!
And, you know, and it's what I thought was so kind of revolutionary about the show quietly was the women on the show were supposed to be like dynamic and flawed and beautiful and interesting, but we didn't look like we were playing vampires on a teen soap opera. You know, we looked like normal women. You know, to be to be 24 years old and be a size 8 and be on television at that time be a dark-skinned Indian woman, it's just like that was not happening. So even though the show didn't seem very glamorous or anything, it was sort of quietly doing this, and that bled over into other comedy shows like Parks and Recreation after it, and then other shows. So
So it was a groundbreaker in many
I
ways.
think so in that way.
Did they limit you to writing only the women's stuff, or did you write stuff for men as well? Was it like, oh, she's just going to be the voice of the women?
No, and what was so fascinating about that show is, although I love romance and romantic comedies, there's a central couple in that show, Jim and Pam, who were the couple that everyone loved. But I really liked writing for Dwight and for Michael.
Oh, I love
because
that.
I love
Yay!
because they're just such big, flawed, funny characters. And
Dwight was my favorite.
Dwight is like everybody's favorite. And then when I went on to do my show, you could almost see a direct correlation, although we're such different kinds of characters. I was hooked on the feeling of writing for Michael and Dwight, who would enter a room with a big bad idea. And I was like, oh, I want to play that character because that's the most fun.
It's more fun.
It's more fun than coming in and, most sitcoms, the female character is only there to tell the men just go to bed and stop having these like big stupid ideas. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to be the person who has like all the problems and the funny scenes.
Do you think it's gotten easier now that you've sort of broken through that? Has it gotten any easier for female comedy writers?
Am I responsible for making it easier for all other women in Hollywood? Sure. No, I think I'll take credit for that. No, I do think that when I started working at The Office, there was almost no shows on TV with female leads on it. And since then, in 10 years, I think, there's Veep, there's Broad City, there's Parks and Recreation, there's 30 Rock. All my favorite shows have female leads, and that was something that was on messy TV growing up. You had wonderful female characters in ensemble comedies, but none of them where it was like a female lead. And Shonda Rhimes has done so much. Breaking through by not even, Ava DuVernay said something really interesting about how she doesn't like saying diversity in television. She likes saying inclusion.
Inclusion.
Because diversity makes it seem, to me, this is my interpretation of what she was saying, is diversity makes it seem like it's a chore, like an assignment that a teacher gave you that you have to do. Whereas inclusion is, hey, if you don't have inclusion, you are doing something wrong, as opposed to actively going out of your way to put minorities and put women and putting characters of different sexual orientations into shows. So I'm really into now saying inclusion rather than diversity.
Okay, and we can include men in that too when we're having a female moment, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we like to do. So Greg Daniels, who adapted The Office for American audience, was your mentor. In fact, you've said you owe your career to him. So what was Greg's most important advice to you, and do you think you would have gotten different advice from a woman?
Greg's advice to me that was the most valuable, especially going on to my own show, was be kind, is what he said to me.
Kind.
And that might be kind of Mindy specific, because I think many of you maybe face the same things, is what makes you professionally successful is not necessarily what makes you personally successful. And what I found has helped me professionally is to be very decisive. And being decisive is often considered a very masculine quality.
Yes, we were going to talk about that.
Right.
Yep.
And so professionally, I'm not very demure. I know exactly what I want and I say it. Now, often when you're being direct and decisive, it can seem brusque.
Yes.
I don't put a lot of disclaimers on what I say.
Yes.
I say, I want this, I want that. And so when he said to be kind, I think what he meant, and this is at least I've interpreted it, is that it's fine to be decisive, and every woman should be, and we shouldn't go out of our way to be more demure than a male counterpart. I will say, though, remembering in that same time to show kindness to people who are maybe nervous to talk to you and get an answer from you has been invaluable. Because I wasn't trained to be a manager. I was trained as an actress and as a writer. And so that's a skill that you're just somehow supposed to learn along the way. And that has been very useful to me.
Yeah, I think we all find that, is that, as we came up, you can read about being a manager. If you go to business school, you learn to be a manager, but we all kind of have to learn seat of the pants managing. So, but that's interesting. So did you have a lot of pushback originally to your style? Because I happen to have that style as well, which is, I always feel like people are happier to know where they stand with me rather than all this pretending, and then people are doing things behind the scenes. And people come back and work with me for that reason, because they know exactly where they stand. There's no hidden agenda. What was your thinking behind being sort of brusque and out there and upfront?
Well, I think, again, even there's a difference between being brusque and impatient and decisive and direct, right? So brusque and impatient is, I think, when I don't have enough sleep, when I am cranky about something else.
Okay.
And direct and decisive is like when I'm at my best. I'll say that I really learned the hard way. When I got my own show, I was so grateful and so worried that it was going to get taken away from me that I wasn't direct and decisive, and that's when I get into trouble.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to worry about other people's feelings, or if asserting this, or saying what I truly feel, I was worried that that was going to hurt people's feelings. It would always end up happening that what I would want would happen, and people would feel hurt or mad that I wasn't direct. So if I could go back to when I started my show at 32, I would take the attitude that I have now, and for all future endeavors, like whether it's a movie or a new TV show I create, I think that kind of getting rid of all the pretense that I think we do a lot of times as women to make people like us, but instead be like, they're going to like me because I'm decisive and because I say what I request politely and clearly. That would have saved me so much anguish, frankly, in the first couple of years of writing my show.
It's hard.
No.
Do you think a woman would have told you to be kind? Or would it sound different coming from a woman and you wouldn't have accepted it the same way?
Well, there's advice that you give as to women in general, and then there's me specifically. And I think that the advice to be kind was probably because Greg knows that I'm a comedy writer. I'm a pretty judgmental person. And that has its good qualities and its bad qualities. But I think any woman who had worked with me for 8 years, as Greg did, might have also given me that advice, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your second book, Why Not Me? Tell us about the meaning of that phrase.
Yeah, sure. Why Not Me, to me, has two meanings. The first is the sort of straightforward, ambitious interpretation of Why Not Me, which is, growing up and watching Comedy Central as a kid and Saturday Night Live and all the sitcoms and movies, I never once saw a person who looked like me. But it didn't match up with my ambition and my desire to still have that job anyway. And because my parents were so encouraging of me and sort of built me up to have this confidence that was maybe not commensurate with my talent when I was younger, I thought, like, why can't it be me? Why can't I have a show like that? I see Indian people and Indian women around in my life, and yet it's not reflected in anything that I see. And so much of my career has been questioning the status quo of what I see on television and film and trying to find a place for myself. So that's the first meaning. The second meaning of Why Not Me, and another part of my book is I think a little bit more like a vulnerable side of my personality, which is that, I'm 37. I'm a godparent. I've been a bridesmaid at endless amounts of weddings, and I'm someone who is, like, sort of famously fixated on love and romance. And I think the other side of Why Not Me is like, why not me? Why have I not been selected to go into part of the sort of the great American tradition of marriage and starting a family, and not just American, but just be part of that, which is so, since a girl, I've fetishized through all the movies and television I wanted. So it was a great way for me to write about the two very distinct aspects of my personality that kind of are at war with each other a lot of the time.
Interesting. Okay. So let's talk about hard work.
Okay.
When I look at your Twitter feed, I have to tell you, when you look at her millions and millions, and it was something like 15 million tweets or something like that. I was like, oh my God, this woman works. So let's talk about hard work. So it's no secret that you work a lot and you play a lot, obviously, and yet women are often conditioned to downplay how much of their success is, as we're saying today, just getting shit done, right? How is being able to outproduce a competitor valuable? And is that one of your edges that you have? Because you just seem to be a nonstop energizer bunny going.
So it's such a good question, and I think that the one hardest thing we have as women is that if you're a hard worker and you're a man, I think it's considered just a straightforward compliment. And yet, as women, if you work really hard, or it's something that you value a lot as hard work and determination and perseverance, it's somehow considered like you're thirsty or you are trying too hard for something. And it's so unfair. you're supposed to, again, I use this word all the time because I think it's like the number one enemy to women is to be demure and not to want for things. And in my career, hard work has been the only way that I have been able to achieve anything. And I think it's such a trap. And I think that there's something that's seemingly not feminine to be ambitious and to buckle down and work hard. Now, luckily, I'm the child of Indian immigrants, so like they did not have any of those like sort of pretenses, and so I wasn't raised with any of that. But I do think that that can be a trap for a lot of women.
Did you find that when you got out in the world, if you got away from your family where ambition was okay, did you run into a barrier where people were saying, too much, this doesn't look good on you? Or was it pretty much you just rolled right through? Anybody give you resistance?
I mean, just like working hard?
Yeah.
No, I mean, in workplaces, for my employers, it's incredibly valued. But I think among other people, and especially men, it's the only way, I think, to move forward is to say, like, okay, well, I'm just going to be the first person to arrive and the last person to leave. When I was living in New York City as a playwright, I remember so well that, like, after we'd do a play, everyone would go to, like, the same bar, and you'd kind of, like, there'd be all these male directors and playwrights, and sort of the unspoken thing was you were supposed to go and flirt with them because this idea of networking with them and making them feel sort of like sexually viable was going to help them want to cast you and things. And partially just because there was like literally no interest from any of those men in me, I would just like finish acting in my play that I wrote, and I'd go home and I'd work on a spec script for this show Arrested Development, which I knew was going to be handy later. And I never went to any of the parties. I never went to any of the like little like networking events. And I think it was the only reason why I was able to kind of push ahead is, I just thought that was such a waste of time, and there was like literally no place for me in the world, and it gave me all this extra time to focus on like just quietly, meticulously working.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. You've said that confidence is just entitlement. So wait, how is entitlement a good thing?
So I think entitlement has a really bad rap.
Yes.
Because I think entitlement is used exclusively for like the useless children of rich like moguls.
Yes.
Who go on private jets and call stewardesses peasants and like smoke pot in bathrooms and stuff like that. So entitlement in the way that it's used now
We know a few of those,
yes,
right?
is bad. And I think, but all entitlement means is that you expect certain things based on what you're bringing to the table. And so I think entitlement in general is a wonderful thing, especially for women. But the key to entitlement, in my opinion, is preparedness and hard work. So I feel entitled to wherever I go, but I also make sure that in any situation I'm in, I am like, okay, I'm the most prepared here. And then I feel like I'm like, sure, I deserve my entitlement, and I think it's fine.
Now, it's interesting you bring up the word prepared. I think that's a thing that women, they know how to use, but we always feel we have to be better prepared than the guy in the room.
Absolutely.
In order to win, right?
Yeah, we have to be, yeah.
Do you think that that's true going forward as well? Because I know that's how women have figured out how to beat some of the guys, because they kind of walk in, they know 50% of it, and the women have done all the studying and the work. Do you think that's still the case, that we have to be overly prepared and they can be 50%?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I
Not
do
going
think
away
that.
soon?
I don't think it's going away soon, although, Hollywood is, I think, maybe very different than other fields. But I think not only do women, is the expectation that women are going to be, if you're going to succeed, you're going to be as prepared, if not more prepared than the men. You also have to look beautiful and also have to present in an ambitious way that isn't threatening to any men there, So it's a lot of acting and behind the scenes work, and
So it's
a lot.
It's acting all the time.
Yeah, to a small degree, I think so.
That's a very tough business.
I mean,
have
you
to
must find
say.
this in publishing as well, like you are, you're an employer,
Right.
but it's also you're involved in fashion.
Right.
So
Oh,
your
yes.
appearance has to be a huge part of it.
Oh, yes.
While on some level knowing as a feminist that like your appearance shouldn't be a huge part of it.
Oh, and it matters.
So, yeah, and it does.
Oh, yes. As I say, I worked for the devil who wore Prada for many years. And that's a whole nother story.
Oh, I have
But
to
yes,
hear that.
and I'll just, when I came back from maternity leave, I was looked at like the day I walked in like this, up and down,
Right?
very visibly and approved of so I could come back to my job. But it's a tough world. So when you were honored at Glamour as Glamour Woman of the Year in 2014, you said it was crucial for you that the Mindy Project have a large number of female writers. So beyond basic equity, why was that?
Well, I think this is a pretty simple answer, which is that my character plays an OBGYN. And so you need women to tell those stories, even to like the smallest details. I mean, like no man would know any of those details of like, setting comedy scenes in an exam room where you just immediately have to be like, no, nothing weird can happen in an exam room for OBGYN. Like it would be traumatizing for a woman, like we can't do that. And so that was just a way to get people who had done life, 16 years of research already is getting them in the room. Also, I just like working with women.
Do you?
Yeah,
Do they
I
bring
do.
something else to the table? Do you feel, or can you just kind of let your hair down when you're with women more than you can with men?
I think there is something, maybe this is just a little sexist. I find that with women who are at least in LA, who've made it to a certain point in our comedy writers, we have so much specific in common in the kind of battles that we've had to fight.
I was going to say battle worn together.
Battle
right?
worn together, and we roll our eyes at the same thing, and the same things. And I just think it's nice. It's also I love men. I've had great boyfriends in the past, but my relationships with women have been the most sustaining of my life, starting from my mother and all the way through the women that I work with, the female directors, the writers, and I just enjoy it. And I'm about to shoot 2 movies that have all female casts, and I could not be more excited. Yeah, so.
Do you think that, and when you talk about that,
Oh, thank
yes,
you.
all female cast, we know how hard that
I know,
is
it's unusual.
to do, right?
I'm doing this Ocean's 8, which is a female
Talk
reboot
about
of Ocean's
that.
11.
Let's talk about that.
And then I'm doing A Wrinkle in Time with Oprah and Reese Witherspoon.
So
and we're playing
excited, my
3
favorite
witches.
book.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. So my next 8 months is just going to be like around female moguls. So I'm like hoping to learn a lot and ask Oprah questions about Weight Watchers. Yes, go ahead.
Do you ever get when people say that, they're like, oh, women are so catty, they're going to fight with each other, all that kind of stuff. Does anybody say that to you? Because I've had people say that to me, what's it like to work with all women? I'm like, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think the cattiness thing and the idea that all women are divas and things like that, and
Right.
especially actresses, is very pervasive.
Right.
But it's just a way for people to gossip. I will say it's funny because we were talking about the Ocean's movie and how I remember when the first ones came out with the reboot of the 1960 version came out with George Clooney and Brad Pitt. You'd hear all these rumors about, George Clooney likes to play pranks on set.
Yes,
and
I heard
to all the other actors, and I was like, oh, that is the one place where an all-female Ocean's is going to be different than the male, because like I can't pull a prank on Rihanna on the set of Ocean's 8 because her bodyguard will tase me. And I think that comes from the fact that as women, white men can play pranks on each other, and there's not this feeling of like, I'm not, like this isn't safe, I'm gonna get hurt. But with women, if you pull pranks on other women, especially famous women, you're living much more of like a high level of I'm worried about my safety. And when I was thinking about that, I was like, oh, that is a little bit, that's kind of different about our set and theirs. Because it would be a great thing where you could pull pranks on other women, but you kind of can't.
That's so interesting.
Because of the
Didn't
things
know.
that we face every day and the threats that we're worried about every day. And I thought that was interesting.
Do you find the all-women cast thing, after what happened with Ghostbusters and the pushback and all of that online and stuff like that, are you concerned at all about going forward with all-female casts and especially redoing things that had men in it, or are we there? Have we finally gotten over our resistance to this idea?
Do you know, I think and I really liked Ghostbusters, and I was sorry when I heard all of that happening. I think the difference between this movie and that was Ghostbusters was really put on a pedestal for for men of a certain age. It's like the big comedy movie of their youth. and how could you mess with this iconic thing and everything. Whereas
Okay.
I believe that Oceans, there's not a lot of men who are like, you're messing with Oceans 11?
Yeah.
Only the most iconic male movie, like, that doesn't really exist for men. I mean, everyone likes the Ocean's 11 reboot in 2001, and they think it was a great movie, but I don't think men are clamoring around it like it was Apocalypse Now or something. I think people are like, yeah, that was a great movie, but it's not part of the male canon of masculinity or something.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, there are a lot more women who are watching Ocean's 11s also.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, I hope we're finally getting there. That's the most important thing. So a lot of succeeding in business is perseverance, and everybody in this audience knows about perseverance if you're female. Last year, Fox opted not to renew the Mindy Project. How did you handle that news, and how did you bring the show then to Hulu?
First of all, thank you for saying opted not to renew instead of canceled, which was
Well,
very polite of you and diplomatic of you. And the question is, how did
you bring it to Hulu? And
How did I
what
bring
was
it
it
to Hulu?
like? I mean,
Sure.
if you want to talk about being canceled, was that a shock? Did you see it coming? A lot of women here, including myself, we've lived through those things where you know it's not going to work out in the end and it doesn't work out. And then how do you bounce back? I mean, as you probably know, it's not just about when things are going great.
Yeah.
It is about how you bounce back. So can you talk about that? Did you know it was coming? Were you sad? How did you feel?
I had anticipated it because, our show was not a show we had huge ratings from the very beginning. Like, it was the show we were on Fox for 3 seasons, and it aired on Tuesday, and every Wednesday I was, racing to go look at the ratings with like a beating heart to see. And we really lived like week to week. So when we were up for our 4th season renewal, we had also had the person who had greenlit the show had been replaced at Fox. And so we had 2 new bosses who I didn't have like a really personal relationship with, and really had nothing to gain from the success of the show anyway. So it was, I was anticipating it a little bit, which was good because I could steel myself to this. And Bella Bajaria, who was the head of Universal, who produced our show, was incredibly shrewd, and during the entire months preceding that, had sent me on meetings with the head of Hulu, Craig Erwick, who had been, and Hulu had been a great partner with us because our show was on Hulu the day after it aired on Fox. And in fact,
so you already had
we already had a relationship with
going.
them.
I see.
And it was, if you asked any young woman who was watching our show pretty much under the age of 40, they
All
said
on
that they watched it on Hulu because no one was at home at Tuesday at the time that the show was at. So we had a meeting, a preliminary meeting, just like a lunch with Craig, about a month beforehand, where we could sort of both mutually express how nice our relationship was. And that is really where I thought, obviously, dozens of shows get canceled every year. And what was so brilliant about Bella was that she saw that coming, but didn't want us to be one of the shows that just disappeared. And so she set up that meeting and really orchestrated it so that the show could be sort of parlay seamlessly into being on Hulu exclusively. And so, but to answer the question of when I heard the news, I was actually in Montana with two of my female writers on like a little women's retreat. And we had just been canoeing, and when we looked on our phones and saw the show had been canceled.
So you saw it on your phone? So
yeah, we saw it on our phones. I got like a bunch of missed calls, and then I was in the Blackfoot River.
A news tweet. It came up from somebody else.
Well, we had been canoeing for such a long time that I looked down, I saw a bunch of missed calls, and then I saw all these like news reports on Deadline Hollywood and all these things. And it was actually then when I was like, oh, I'm never going to go on a vacation ever again. This is what happens when you set one foot out of Los Angeles, is they take your entire career away.
They take your career when you go on vacation. Okay, I thought it was only my business that did that.
No, yeah, you can't do. You can't.
They fire editors in chief, not me, but others while you're on vacation. That's a classic.
Really?
Yeah, they send them the pink slip while they're on vacation. Yep.
That's good to know.
Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, that was tough. But then Hulu ended up being the best thing that could have happened to the show.
And that's really the future. I mean, don't you feel like you just crossed over into really the future is going to be things like Hulu and all these other ways of viewing things?
I think so. You know, I see value in everything. I know that all of my favorite shows are on Netflix or Hulu or they're streaming shows. And yet there's still so many millions of people who watch TV on the networks, and I there's so many of my favorite dramas in particular on the networks, and so I see both as very valuable. I think now that I was in network TV between The Office and the first 4 years of being on Fox. I'd done it for 12 years. And to me now, the creative freedom that we have by being on Hulu is just, I could never really go back.
Good.
Yeah, so
All right.
it's nice.
So is the right thing. Okay, you're very open with your 8 million Twitter followers and 2 million Instagram followers. What is the most intimate tweet you've sent, and what do you not post? Or is there anything you posted and then took down?
Oh, I do that constantly,
You
mostly
do?
because I misspell things. But I did
I can't spell either. That's
no,
good to
it's
know.
so
All right.
I think because I'm an employer, and because I have literal rules from my studio parent company of like what I can and cannot say.
Okay.
You know, I think there's certain people like Charlie Sheen who like doesn't care what he puts on social media and it's fine. For me though, it's, you know, I employ over 200 people on my show.
200.
And I just think, you know, in general, I will tweet because I am a very open person. If I tweet complaints or anything negative, I try to make it be about like a corporation or an entity of people rather than like an ad hominem attack about individuals. One, not even just because I'm an employer, because I also just don't think it's very well raised to do that. And as
You're not up at 3 in the morning sending out tweets?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm
Too
not.
bad. Okay.
But I do like, I know a lot of people, actors and things like that, have people who tweet for them or do social media for them, and I don't understand that at all.
Don't tell me, you do those 15 million tweets yourself?
Is
All
it
of them?
15 million
It's some
tweets? That makes me
ghastly,
seem like a real loser. Like,
huge
that makes me feel like all I do is
number.
tweet.
No, it's
No.
enormous. I looked at it and I was going to ask you, but I thought she has to have a team because you're doing all this other stuff.
Well,
Do
you
you do 90% of those tweets yourself?
No, I do 100% of the tweets.
100%? Unbelievable.
Well, no, again, it makes me
All
sound
right.
like a huge loser that doesn't work hard.
No.
But it's the thing about
You're
Twitter
just
is that like I don't
incredible.
spend any time, like they're not profound, my tweets. It's like the Mindy Project is on tonight. If that's taking you longer than 8 seconds,
all right,
then
you have to
there's some
teach
real
me
problems.
to tweet. After this, she's going to teach me to tweet so I can get up to 15
They're mostly
million.
just like pretty photos of myself taken at like that angle.
But
Like it's
still,
not. It's
That's
not.
incredible. Okay, that's amazing. Completely amazing. Do you draw the line between public and private and what you'll put out there with social
Definitely,
media?
definitely.
So do you have separate feeds, or is it just
Oh, do I have like
one?
a private
Yeah,
account?
yeah, do you
No,
have a
I
private
don't.
account?
And I'm always hearing about like the mythical private Matt Damon account or whatever you hear about. That you're like, where is he on
The
Insta?
real, you don't have the real Mindy Kaling hidden
No, for my
somewhere?
friends. No,
Okay.
maybe I should. You know, I kind of just, my rule of thumb is just, I'm very close to my dad, and though he's not particularly conservative or anything, like he's pretty traditional and he's 70 years old, and I just try to make it so that anything that he would read or see wouldn't make there be any kind of like fraughtness in our relationship.
Okay.
But if you've watched 2 minutes of my TV show, you know that I'm not
You're pretty
like,
out
shy.
there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's like but that's my character and me personally. The other thing is that I don't have like that of a dramatic or sexy personal life. You know, I know the same like 14 people that I see every single day. I've had like 3 boyfriends in my entire life. So even if I wanted to make it really risque, there's not that much fodder for that. I wish
Okay.
there was.
Have you had to deal with any social media trolls? Because I know a lot of celebrities do, and
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And-
There's something about and I learned a lot, and I really was affected a lot by what happened to Lesley Jones
yes.
on social media.
Yes, do you all know what happened with Lesley Jones?
Lesley Jones is a cast member on Saturday Night Live, who's one of the stars of Ghostbusters, and she's a hilarious stand-up comedian as well. And she's this incredibly charismatic African-American comic. And when she was cast in Ghostbusters, besides just the vitriolic feelings people felt for women doing those iconic parts, she in particular, I think, was singled out because of the way she looks.
Yeah, which was outrageous.
Outrageous and
Outrageous.
disturbing, I think.
Yes,
And
disturbing.
what I kind of learned from that was that there are a lot of people who have problems with women, especially women of color, who don't conform to a certain ideal, like a physical beauty ideal, that makes people mad. And it makes people mad, and I've seen it, and you see it with sports figures. It happens to them all the time. And the thing that is, the thing that I think that people don't realize, and this is kind of the one nice thing to come out of that, is whenever I see women being attacked that way, and I too feel like on a smaller level, I am also sort of scrutinized in that same way, is it engenders so much love and protectiveness around those people. Like when I see like Simone Biles getting picked on, or Serena Williams, I am like, it makes me be like, I am loyal to them till they die, or till I die. And I think that that was the one nice thing that came of it, is that people, the expression of solidarity that you could feel for Lesley Jones. And so that's the one thing that happens to me, is I do get comments and trolls who say things. It's one thing for people to say, I don't like your show, I don't think it makes any sense, I don't like this, I don't like that guest star, this character, you know, all that. And in fact, I think that can be helpful, but I do get some of that. And what I found is that I've just had to stop looking at it. And it's hard, because I'm a real like A student, like addicted to feedback, people pleaser. But I realized as I've gotten into my 30s that it's just not helpful or healthy.
Right.
And it can
Just
be kind of
don't
scary.
engage. Yeah, they're scary.
For sure.
Cool. Okay, and Why Not Me, you write about your pitch meeting with Fox for the Mindy Project. You went to the Mac store to get your makeup done, then to the dry bar to get a blowout, took a couple of shots of Jose Cuervo in the parking lot, and then changed from her Keds into, quote, the slutty career woman stilettos, like these, right?
Which I'm wearing now.
Slutty career women stilettos that you put on before you see someone important. What role does fashion play in how you present yourself?
It used to not play as much of a role. I think when I became an on-camera actor, when I became played a much bigger role. And in that meeting in particular, I was trying to get the head of Fox to buy the show and to convey two things. One, that I was a competent showrunner who could produce 22 episodes of a television show, but also that I was a leading lady. So it was just a lot to have to do at once. And for me, I think everybody, and I think this is towards women and men, there is a great deal of looksism that takes place in the workplace. And I gotta say, I don't always think it's bad. I think it's sometimes good, because it's the one place where it is, women are especially scrutinized in this way, but so are men. And I think that I like the feeling of being put together. I think what I project instantly when I go into a room is helpful, especially if particularly I don't feel as put together like inside. And so I think it can be a really useful tool for women. I mean, you must have found that in your career as well.
Well, yeah, I grew up with that idea that if your clothes walk in before you get to say anything about it. So now I heard you might start a fashion line. Is that right, or is that rumor?
I would love to. I haven't had the time to do that.
Oh, it's because of all the tweeting.
Because of all my users tweeting.
Okay.
I also think that it's the thing about a fashion line is that's one of those things where there's so many people who are trained in it, and I think I feel a little vulnerable. Like if I did a fashion line and it were to fail, I would feel like a little embarrassed, because people go to FIT and they are really trained in it. But my fantasy is further down the line to do a line of clothing for women, and particularly workwear.
Great.
It would be great.
Awesome. So one last thing I just wanted to mention. We saw that Fox 2000 nabbed your script for you to star with Emma Thompson in a story about a late-night talk show host who's at risk for losing her long-running show right when she hires her first female writer. So it's been touted as The Devil Wears Prada meets broadcast news. Is there anything autobiographical there?
Yes, a lot of it is autobiographical. I mean, I was kind of inspired because I'd be watching these award shows and you'd see, somebody would win for best late night TV show, and a white man would go up and accept an award, and the entire stage of his writers were all white men in tuxedos. And I felt like, oh, the late night comedy world is years behind even the sitcom comedy room. And it seemed like a really interesting cutthroat environment that was in a lot of ways similar to the Devil Wears Prada environment. And I thought it'd be great to, for years now, I've played this incredibly confident to almost a delusional level character. It'd be great to play someone who is a hard worker, but not glamorous, not confident, but is very ambitious and talented and wants to be a comedy writer in that way. And I thought Emma Thompson, who is an actress who is probably my favorite living actress.
She's amazing.
It'd be great for her to play this role of a late night talk show host who appears one way to the American public, but is a completely different way. And it felt just like a really nuanced, interesting character. And I personally in my career have identified as both characters, so it felt like the perfect thing to write.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, one last question and then we're done. There's been a lot of talk about the female body in the news recently and controversy about men speaking negatively about women's weight. Mm-hmm. So in one interview you said, quote, that I identify, quote, as cute and chubby, and that, quote, far too many women are much more hurt by being called fat or ugly than they are by being called not smart or not a leader. How have you learned to love who you are, and who or what has made you strong?
It's a really great question, and I think far more in this election cycle than ever before have I heard sort of the specter of a woman's appearance come into play, obviously because of who's running. But I find it very sad, and I hope, and this is the one way that I really lucked out with my parents, that there was nothing more insulting to you as a child, or to me growing up, is for someone to call you stupid or underprepared or badly behaved. And being called like fat or not pretty was just not nearly as much of an insult. That was just the way that my mother was and the way that I was raised. And when I got older and I saw that that was not the case for a lot of my friends, I realized like, I don't know if it was really a conscious thing, but like what an advantage I had.
Yes.
And I hope that, I don't know, I hope we can get to a place where a young girl would be far more offended by being called not smart than to be not called fat. Because you know what? Being called fat, being called not pretty, these are just weapons that men can use against women that we can't use against them. And I hope I have a daughter someday. I hope I have a couple of daughters. I think the mother-daughter relationship is the most special one that there is, based on my relationship with my mom. And
it is.
I just hope that I can pay that forward with girls, or if they're not my daughters, to other young girls, because it's really has such a hugely long-lasting effect on people's life. And when I look back at why I think I'm successful, I'm fairly impervious to when people say those things about me, because it's like, well, I was born this way and I can't really change that.
And it wasn't a family value.
And it just wasn't a family value. And I hope that's something that can change as we, as things move forward, or even I can see in my lifetime. But that seems like the simplest way to help such a huge inequity that women face and
Great.
Don't need to at all.
Good. Well, Mindy, thank you
Yeah,
so much
course.
for being here. Let's
Thank you
give
for having
Mindy a
me.
hand. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Such great questions. Thanks, guys.